wondering about Kurt's heroin use, says Rosemary Carroll. I heard rumors, maybe from the first time I was aware of him. I don't know. Towards the end, it affected his relationship with everybody. It gave people something to pin their own anger on, their frustration and inability to deal with a genius, because he was a drug addict. That's what angered me most. He had so much more to do and say and create, but he was also under a huge amount of pressure. And more than what the heroin may have done to him theologically, it was the way it gave everybody an excuse to dismiss him that was so wrong. His legitimate grievances were dismissed as the ravings of a junkie. There was that big intervention, Kurt's former lawyer continues. I did not go to that. During the last weeks of his life, he did call me 2 or 3 times. I tried to tell him he had options, and the pressures he was feeling that were unbearable could be alleviated, that all the paths facing him that were horrible could be avoided. He could have altered his life. He didn't have to stay in nirvana. He didn't have to stay in any relationship that was paining him. But I told him that to get out of these situations, he had to be straight, because as long as he was a junkie, he was providing an alibi for everyone that was controlling him. The only times I'd talk to him was when he'd call me, because he was not reachable. One time, he talked to my daughter, who he really liked, and she asked him to come down and visit us. I wanted to get into a room with him and tell him he could be protected. It all seemed so unbearable to him and so enormous. I wish we'd all done a better job of protecting him. So there was an intervention planned for March 21, but Kurt got tipped off and left, adds Callie. Chris Novoselic told him because he thought it was a stupid idea. Chris was sensible throughout the whole thing, the best he could be, says Callie. Kurt said cruel things to Chris, but he didn't mean them. He was just full of misery and wanted everyone to get away from him. You don't want people who really love you there trying to help you, or people like the people who were at the actual intervention. A few friends and a lot of business people assembled in the Lake Washington house that day for a tough love session were Courtney, Danny Goldberg, John Silva, and Janet Billig from Gold Mountain, Pat Smear, Callie, Dylan Carlson, Mark Cates, and Gary Gersh from DGC, and a presiding counselor, David Burr. Wendy was absent, looking after Francis in Aberdeen. Tough love sessions are supposed to wake the user up to the reality surrounding them. Each person present was told to confront Kurt with the consequences of what would happen if he didn't stop taking heroin. Geffen would drop Nirvana, Nirvana would split up, Courtney would divorce Kurt, Gold Mountain would refuse to work with Nirvana. Kurt must have known most of the speeches were bullshit. Most of those present didn't feel they had the authority to confront the individual upon whom a large proportion of their livelihoods depended. He had such an aura around him that day, remarks Goldberg, that it felt like we were walking on eggshells. When I arrived and saw Dylan was there, recalls Renee Navarrete, I knew something weird was going on because Courtney had recently exorcised him from the house. But by that point, Kurt wasn't listening to me. I was saying we needed to get out of there, but Dylan was already making him high and there was no talking to him. I was concerned for Kurt's state of mind. I knew it would be a mess. Plus, Courtney was using dope to keep him there. I knew that Kurt's attitude was that he didn't care if he died. Any change that was going to happen wouldn't happen by having his hand forced. Dylan had dope, so we all got loaded together, Renee continues, but I knew something was going to go down. Soon as I saw Eric, I told him, I've got to get out of here. That's when Eric lent me money for a plane ticket to LA. Before I left, I went to Kurt and told him I was leaving, and told him it was my birthday soon, and that if he was going to rehab, he'd be there for my birthday on March 30th. I called the house that night. Pat Smear gave me a play-by-play. He told me the intervention was ridiculous. Courtney was the only one who spoke for any length of time. She implored Kurt to go to treatment at the Exodus Recovery, a drug rehabilitation center in Marina del Rey, SA. She threw at him the one threat she knew he couldn't shrug off, that if she divorced him, he wouldn't be able to see Francis very often. Kurt listened to all his peers in silence, and then in venomous terms pointed out the hypocrisy and faults of many of those present. In my memory, it feels like there were like 20 business people there, says Callie. There was probably more like 8. There was Danny Goldberg and people from Gold Mountain. All these people who don't really have anything to do with what was going on and hadn't been friends to him on a personal level. What were they doing here? He was acting really, really fucked up. He was acting too fucked up to stand. It wasn't my place, but I was getting annoyed. It was bothering me. It was this weird attention everyone was giving him. Courtney or someone kept saying, Callie, walk him around. I was walking him around the backyard and it dawned on me how stupid it was. We were out on the lawn and I was like, buddy, you don't really need me to walk you around. I dropped him and he fell down to the floor. He smiled and looked up at me in a way like, you understand that I don't need you to walk me around. I could totally walk. It was almost like he thanked me with his eyes for dropping him. It's been written that Dylan refused to take part. Dylan was there, Callie replies. Dylan tried to appeal to Kurt as a friend. This is the other instance of Kurt throwing it into the faces of people he cared about. He started yelling at Dylan. Dylan was too fragile to handle it. He was like, "What the fuck are you doing here? You're just as bad as all these other people." He threw a recycling bin at Dylan filled with glass, and all this glass broke and Dylan started crying and left. At that point, Courtney had been picking on Kurt for so long and so much, he felt trapped. And now she had brought basically what he considered the enemy into the house to tell him what he was doing wrong. The only reason to have an intervention is to show someone that you're hurting people you care about and not in a tough love way, Callie explains. A few close friends of mine and my dad did an intervention on me, and it had effect because they were all people I respected. They weren't yelling at me. An intervention that would have been successful would have been like Tracy and Toby. People.
So did you hear that? So Kurt and Dylan were having fights just like the week prior to him being killed at the house by Dylan and Mark Lanigan and one other individual, possibly Dan.
Kurt had known for years, Ian Dixon. People who don't have a vested interest in success. I feel like I can remember them talking about, "You need to clean up, do Lollapalooza" at the intervention. That was missing the point completely. It should have been, "Why don't you not go on tour for a year, never record again, just get together with your daughter and leave this all behind?" Courtney tried to convince Kurt to fly with her to LA, where she was checking into the $500 a night Peninsula Hotel to detox herself, but he refused, flipping through the yellow pages instead, trying to find a proper psychiatrist, so he left the house in a car with Janet Billig. It was the last time she saw her husband alive. One by one, the others followed. "Yeah, it happened, and they all left," says Callie. "We were left in the house like, what the fuck? What just happened?" Kurt retreated to the basement and played around with a few ideas on guitar with Pat and Eric. The following day, Jackie Ferry came by and took Francis away to LA to be near Courtney. Jackie had to take Francis at this.
So that's really important too. Kurt retreated to the basement during his last days. That means Kurt retreated to the basement. And just a week prior to being murdered in his house by Dylan and Mark Lanigan and another individual, possibly Danny, he had an argument with Dylan at the intervention and threw a garbage can full of glass at Dylan and yelled at him. So that same thing happened on early Sunday morning around 2 a.m. on April 3rd.
Point, Callie says.
Not Monday, by the way. I really have to, oh my gosh, really go over things more and more so before I just say them. It was Sunday, early in the AM, which is early Sunday morning, 2:32 a.m. But here we go. So remember, he was yelling at Dylan, and he threw a garbage can at him full of glass. That was at the intervention just like a week before he was murdered in the basement. Well, when he was attacked in the basement by Dylan and Mark and another individual, where another screaming match happened and yelling and scuffle. And then he was murdered by Mark in the greenhouse because he was still alive. He was just unconscious at the time when the gunshot went off.
I was like, "Will you come take Francis because my drugs have gotten out of hand in the face of this madness in the house right now?" I've got Courtney saying, "You have to stick to Kurt like glue right now. Don't let him do anything." She wants me to shadow him and call her and tell her what he's doing. I'm really in the middle of this thing now. Having turned his back on the intervention, Kurt had no one to hold him in check, and the inevitable happened once more. He OD'd, alone on the back seat of his Valiant, where he'd been placed by other users scared that if a famous rock star died in their apartment, they'd be in trouble with the police. He didn't die. He woke up the next day, aching all over. He returned home, ignored any phone messages from Courtney, and called Rosemary. She convinced him that he should try treatment one more time, and so reservations were made for Kurt to fly out to LA on Tuesday, March 29th. Christ was asked to drive Kurt to SeaTac Airport, but on the way there, Kurt once again.
By the way, I think I'm going to clear up the confusion with Courtney Love being there. I think I'm right on this, because that Marine girl from Babes in Toyland had Dylan admit to her that Courtney and Dylan seen the body a day before the police did. So that was on the 7th. And if those individuals, eyewitnesses at the house, stayed 3 or 4 days and then left, then they would have seen on the 7th, possibly they would have seen exactly on the 7th, they would have seen someone in the red dress there. And that would have been Courtney. But not on the night of the murder, or early morning of the murder, I mean. But I think that is being covered up. Okay, back to the book.
Changed his mind. He attempted to leap from Chris' car while it was driving along the Interstate 5, and, once at the terminal, he punched Chris in the face. The pair grappled and Kurt broke loose, sprinting away across the concourse. It would be the last time Chris saw him. On Wednesday, March 30th, Kurt had a change of heart again. He would get treatment, after all. Before he left, he got loaded and drove over to Dylan Carlson's condominium, where he asked his old friend to do him a favor. He wanted Dylan to buy him a rifle for protection, and because of prowlers, the police had taken away all his other guns. So the pair drove over to Stan Baker Sports on 10,000 Lake City Way, NE, and purchased a 6-pound Remington M11 20-gauge shotgun and a box of ammunition for $308.30.
I just want to say this too. It's becoming more and more obvious the more I look at this case consistently, exactly what happened. Like him yelling at Dylan and throwing that trash can at him with glass in it. It's the same thing that happened in the basement. The yelling, the argument, the same kind of thing. Not even really a week later, with the same individual, as well as Courtney, and the statements that place her there on the 7th before the body was found. That would have been the person in the red dress, I believe. Because I know Joe didn't say exactly, it's Dylan or Mark in the dress. And if Dylan was up in the greenhouse seeing the body with Courtney a day before the before the police found the body, just like that band member from Babes in Toyland says, then that means that would have been her in that red dress, like kind of like a date with her, a date with death, like showing up with a dress. Just, it was something personal, like she just had to see it before the body was removed.
7 cents cash. Kurt seemed normal, Dylan remarked. Plus, I loaned him guns before. If he was suicidal, he sure hid it from me. Dylan offered to hold on the gun for Kurt, knowing he was on his way to Exodus, but Kurt insisted on keeping the gun himself. At LAX, Kurt was met by Pat Smear and John Silva's assistant, Michael Meisel, who drove to the center. The singer checked into room 206 and enrolled in a 28-day program. During the next couple of days, several psychologists...
Oh, as well as possibly Dylan planting the shells in Kurt's backpack, and Kurt was shocked about it. That would have been even a media setup. Kurt's completely unhinged and crazy and suicidal. Oh my gosh. Out of his mind on heroin. He doesn't even know what he's doing. Luckily, he found them, and that didn't work. Unfortunately, he went back there. He left Los Angeles and went back, of course.
Visited Kurt, none of whom suspected he was suicidal. He voiced his concerns about the forthcoming Kevin Kerslake lawsuit, fearing it could bankrupt him. And when Jackie Ferry came to visit with...
And by the way, I'm actually getting all of this right. I'm actually figuring it out correctly. I'm not leaving out anyone's name or anything, because some YouTube channels, they've become friends with people with Mark Lanigan. And now they want to please those people and keep those friendships. And they're not really helping Kurt at all anymore. But here we go.
Francis told about the arguments he'd been having with Courtney over Lollapalooza. But generally, he seemed in good spirits. And when Jackie and Francis came back the following morning, he was in an upbeat mood.
Oh, and by the way, Eric Blanc, stop making stuff up about what Bonnie said. She blocked you pretty quickly because you were being rude to her. Mm-hmm. Joe even said that to me. I know Joe didn't say that part. I actually seen that. You actually put that on your own YouTube, on your membership part. So if you sign up and you pay some money, anyone can see Bonnie's messages to Eric Blanc. And they're really short lived because she blocked him shortly after. And now he likes to make up things saying Bonnie's saying that and Joe's saying this. And Joe tells me he's not saying those things to Eric Blanc. And you get another fake AI movie poster every month about a new documentary that's not happening. And Jason and all the rest of them can't even speak with Eric Blanc. So, what the heck? I don't know. Anyway, here we go.
Showering Jackie with compliments and playing with his daughter, throwing her up in the air. It was April 1, the same day that the second leg of Nirvana's European tour, due to restart in Birmingham, England on April 12th, was officially postponed. Later that day, Kurt was sitting outside in the smoking area joking with Butthole Surfers singer Gibby Haynes about one of Gibby's friends who had escaped Exodus by jumping over the 6-foot rear wall. Such an action wasn't necessary as the front gates were always left unlocked, but there was a certain romance to it. What a dumbass, the two musicians laughed. Later, Pat Smear dropped by with a
Let me slow this down a bit.
and Joe Mama Nitzberg. The three men walked out to the back patio and sat and chatted for an hour with Gibby. At some point in the afternoon, Courtney managed to call Kurt. She'd already tried several times to reach him and had a brief conversation. No matter what happens, she claimed he told her, I want you to know that you've made a really good record.
And by the way, so we have this solved here on the Life of a Borderline channel. All we need to do is put out an actual article like with the Daily Mail or whatever, like anybody else does, but actually say the name Mark Lanigan and Dylan Carlson and actually state what Joe has said. That would be amazing to do. Somebody needs to do that. I think it's going to be me because everybody else just wants to make it about them. So, or their friends.
She asked him what he meant. Just remember, no matter what, I love you.
Stupid.
At 7:02 p.m., Kurt walked out of the back door of Exodus and scaled the wall. A couple of hours later, he boarded Delta Flight 788 to Seattle, arriving at SeaTac at 1 in the morning. He was now officially missing. As soon as she heard the news that he'd left Exodus, Courtney started scouring LA for him, calling drug dealers and friends, convinced he would overdose. Here's where I'm in the picture where I'm not supposed to be, says Callie. I was supposed to go down to LA right after him.
And it's a shame that we don't have hundreds of thousands of people listening right now. But people that want to make a lot of money, they do. And of course they do. That's how you do business and get the subscribers here on YouTube as well. With all the Patreon, coffee stuff, apps, I don't know. There's everything that they're making money off of. It sucks that this is a little audience, but it's good. And it's just like Kurt said, it smells like Teen Spirit. A little group. It's always been and always will until the end.
They're both in LA. I'm in Seattle, and I decide to stay in Seattle. I'm a drug addict. I'm in Seattle. What do I want to come down there for? I'm glad they're out of the house. Jessica is staying at the house with me. I'm leaving to go get drugs or go get food or do whatever I do every day. So he runs away from Exodus, and no one knows where he is. Every day when I come into my room, which is downstairs, my phone rings. I answer it, it hangs up. In retrospect, I think that was him in the house.
And by the way, I just want to point this out. Everything I've solved here and like figured out on my own is probably going to be taken by people on popular YouTube channels, and they'll take credit for it once they want to admit to everybody that Mark Lanigan was there, if that day ever comes. And you know who I'm speaking about. But anyway, well, at least I'm documenting everything by doing these live streams. So it's all out there anyway. Here we go.
Calling to see if it was me. I had a collection of metal toys on my shelves, and one day I came home and they were all facing in the wrong direction.
Actually, that's a laugh because I get to say to everybody that they actually had Joe Burns, the eyewitness, saying that Mark Lanigan was there and part of the attack. And yet they denied it to their audience and want to tell people the opposite. And I get a lot of people coming to my channel saying that Mark Lanigan was never there. You're an idiot. Who Killed Kurt says he was never there. They speak to Joe. Michelle speaks to Joe over the phone. He's told her Mark Lanigan was there. He's told me that. So that's not going to look good for your Justice for Kurt thing. Like, what the fuck?
I was like, did I do that? I think that was just him messing with me. On the morning of April 2nd, Kurt took a gray top cab ride over to 145th and Aurora. He was on the lookout for more dope and ammunition. Having already disposed of his first lot, he purchased some 20-gauge shotgun shells from Seattle Guns that day. Once again, Courtney canceled all of Kurt's credit cards.
And by the way, other big YouTubers that are working with that audience are covering up Courtney Love's, sighting of being there on the 7th. And that's not great either. Don't do that either. I'm never going to do that.
The next day, increasingly desperate, she hired a private investigator straight out of the Yellow Pages. But Kurt had gone to ground. There were reports that he'd spent a night with an unidentified friend at the other Cobain residence, the house in Carnation, where police later found a blue sleeping bag and an ashtray filled with 2 brands of cigarettes. But despite a handful of scattered sightings of Kurt hanging around in the park near the house and on Capitol Hill, nobody knew where he was. Wendy O'Connor filed a missing persons report with the Seattle Police.
By the way, if anyone's watching this saying, what's the new information? The new information is Mark Lanigan's last album of Skeleton Joe, 2:32 a.m., admitting it, and what took place, the shotgun blast, as well as Joe stating to me what the last thing was that Kurt Cobain basically was saying, which was, it's okay, everything's fine. And then things got really out of hand. And now we have all these popular YouTube channels trying to discredit me by saying Mark Lanigan wasn't there and discredit Joe. Yeah, he left them with Harvey. He didn't even know they were in his bag. He was genuinely shocked that they were in there. Like they were planted on him to keep him in Seattle.
Department on April 4th
and to also make a scene out of that in the media, that he was completely unhinged and suicidal and just out of it on drugs, bringing those to an airport, just like Courtney did by saying he brought a gun to the hospital when Francis was being born after he had died.
That Kurt had bought a shotgun and may be suicidal. The report also listed Caitlin Moore's address as a possible hangout location. Sunday passed, and then the Monday, he did see me when he got home for a minute, says Callie. He kicked open my bedroom door and saw me in there. He was like, what the fuck are you doing here? You were supposed to go to LA yesterday. I was like, I didn't want to. What are you doing here? Everyone is looking for you. Courtney thinks you're dead in a ditch. He goes, okay, well, I'll call her. I didn't really have any reason to think that he was on the lam and hiding, but that was the last time I saw him. At some point on either Tuesday, April 5 or Wednesday, April 6, Kurt Cobain killed himself. He walked up to the greenhouse above the garage, locked the doors, propped a stool up against the French doors.
And this is total bullshit again. We know he was attacked on Sunday, April 3rd, 1994, at around 2 in the morning and killed at 2:32 a.m. But back to the bullshit. But everything else they say about, everyone else speaking is really interesting.
Wrote a 1-page suicide note in red ink addressed to his imaginary childhood friend Bada, and shot himself in the head with the shotgun, 1 bullet, dying instantly. A cigar box lay by his side, full of drugs and drug paraphernalia. A wallet lay wide open on the floor. Kurt had taken 1.52 milligrams of heroin.
I'm gonna skip
His
over
body,
that.
Courtney sent Eric over to the Lake Washington house to help look for Kurt. He seemed furious with Callie and instructed Callie and Jessica to look everywhere, especially to find a secret compartment in the closet in the master bedroom. But they didn't search the grounds. Courtney had gotten a private detective, the brilliant Tom Grant, to keep an eye on the house, recalls Callie. I was staying at Jennifer Adamson's house for him, and I had searched for this gun she had told me about, and I couldn't find it. I was feeling pretty paranoid when she told me there was a detective watching because I was on drugs all the time. The end result was I said, I'm going to come to LA and see you. I'm on my way. On April 6th, Lollapalooza organizer Ted Gardner issued a press release officially confirming that Nirvana would no longer be headlining the festival due to the ill health of Kurt Cobain. With a richly bitter irony, the headlining slot was passed along to Smashing Pumpkins. On April 7th, management of the Peninsula Hotel placed a 911 call to police. When the cops arrived, Courtney was taken to Century City Hospital for a suspected heroin overdose. She was booked and charged with heroin possession and receiving stolen property. She posted $10,000 bail and was later cleared of all charges. The same day, Callie and Jennifer Adamson carried out another search of the house at 2:05 a.m. Jessica had flown back to Minneapolis 2 days before. They discovered the bed unmade in the master bedroom, cold to the touch, with MTV playing, muted.
Absolutely.
The pair returned again at dusk with a few other friends. Callie was seriously spooked. He didn't want to enter the house. After checking every room, Callie left Kurt a note on the main staircase. Kurt, I can't believe you managed to be in this house without me noticing. You're a fucking asshole for not calling Courtney in it.
He was genuinely spooked because Kurt was already dead. He knew that had happened on Sunday morning in the AM, around 2 a.m. Yeah, it is convenient for Billy. And she was cheating on Kurt right then with Billy as well.
Police not letting her know that you're okay. She's in a lot of pain, Kurt, and this morning she had another accident, hospital again. She's your wife, and she loves you, and you have a child together. Get it together to at least tell her you're okay, or she is going to die.
So, just really quick, who killed Kurt covering up Mark Lanigan's involvement? They have Joe Burns on audio saying to them that Mark was there, but they're telling people he wasn't because they're friends with people that were friends of Mark Lanigan. And I figured out it was Courtney on the 7th that was in there in the red dress in the greenhouse. And that comes from a band member from Babes in Toyland admitting that Dylan said that Courtney was with him in the greenhouse the day before the body was found. That would have been the 7th. And that would have been the same day, 3 or 4 days later, when the eyewitnesses left the house and seen up in the greenhouse and seen someone that looked like Kurt in it. From behind, Courtney Love looks exactly like Kurt Cobain. So, but just know that is being covered up in the mainstream media, and so is all the information about Mark Lanigan. And if anything happens to me, I am not suicidal. All right, back to the book.
It's not fair, man. Do
Yep.
something now. Do you remember the
Right.
wax old lady that we had? Callie asks. It was a life-sized replica of Lizzie Borden. I would put it in windows facing out to scare people, or put it in front of guests' bathroom doors for when they open the door. I was always afraid of that thing. That day, Bonnie and me and some other people went over there to get some food or money or something. On our way out the driveway, Bonnie turned around and said she saw someone looking out the attic window. I turned back and it was gone. In my memory, that was Kurt watching us leave. I imagined it was the wax lady she saw, but it was probably him. I talked to his mom afterwards. She was like, he could be so quiet if he wanted to be. He could just sit there. It was a huge house. So I'm loaded, and I don't think he's in there.
And
if I hear a creak of the floorboards here and there, I'm sure he was there a lot of the time. Was he going over to Caitlin's house? Maybe. He had a car. There's so much crazy speculation. So
Courtney was not there on the night of the murder, but she was there on April 7th, the day before the body was found, which is what we're hearing now.
Police records show,
and they're bullshit about it,
a cab leaving the Cobain residence with a young man answering to Callie's description at 4 p.m. that day. Early that evening, Callie took a flight down to LA. When I got to LA, I was so paranoid.
By the way, Courtney being there the day before the body has been found is being covered up by Chris Todd. Yep. Just as you even write that comment. Wow. So yeah, I'm not suicidal, and get this live stream out because it's all in this live stream, literally. This is like the most important live stream you could put out about Kurt Cobain. Even though it doesn't have hundreds of thousands of views, this is the one. You need to put it out, or at least save it and spread it. And go over what I just said in it, because it's really important.
Callie continues. I went to this girl's house. She was like a high school girlfriend. I was like, someone's watching us. Renee was there. I remember the night so clearly. I was so crazy and I felt so afraid. I found out a couple of years later that her dad had hired a private detective to watch her on a whole separate issue. She was a drug addict, a dominatrix, and she was a rich Jewish girl from a really wealthy family.
Right now, this only has 9 views, but I bet in like years to come, it will have a lot because we really did find out here exactly how it went down. And I've been able to sort through everybody else's bullshit about what happened and what didn't happen. Even the trying to cover up Courtney Love being there a day before the body was found with Dylan.
So I was being watched in both cities. The following morning, around 8:40 a.m. on Friday, April 8th, electrician Gary Smith discovered the body of Kurt Cobain while he was carrying out some routine work on the house's alarm system. He called 911, but not before first calling his boss at Becca Electronics, who promptly called Seattle talk radio KXRX with the scoop of the century. The official police report stated Smith arrived at 171 Lake Washington, BLVD East.
Okay, just a sec. This is not where I wanted to be in this book. What the fuck? Just a sec. What the heck? I want to go over Jessica Hopper's part again.
I don't think I realized how bad it was until I got to Seattle
Thank
during
you.
spring break, states Jessica Hopper. Callie was a complete fucking mess, and Courtney was in a hotel in LA, and Kurt was in rehab in Southern California.
Now it makes sense. Courtney was there on the 7th with Dylan, and we know that because of a member of the band from Babes in Toyland admitting that. Dylan stated that to her when he was high with her. That's a direct quote from her blog. And that would have been the woman, the person in the red dress that looked like Kurt from behind. And this live stream will get a lot of views, and it deserves to. It deserves to get more views than somebody dismissing what the eyewitness says.
California, and Callie
For
was
sure.
using as much as $400 to $500 a day could buy him. He was like, don't answer the phone. Courtney calls every 1 or 2 hours. He was only talking to her intermittently because she was calling constantly. There was a real drama, but it was a manipulated situation. It was during the course of Kurt going missing. I think I'd been there for 2 days. The house was empty, no one else except for Callie and me. It was the first time I'd been to the new house. They had some really nice furniture, but it looked like the other house, like they'd never quite moved in. It was a lot bigger, and there were records and knickknacks and stereos in every room, but Callie's room had a terrible vibe from being in it, smoking cigarettes and getting high and making mixtapes every day. At one
I just want to say something that I want to cut into like another video from this live stream. I'm just going to say it. So, March 30th, 1994, Kurt Cobain leaves to rehab. He leaves rehab on April 1st, and he returns back home on Saturday, April 2nd. He goes out around and about in Seattle. Courtney can't find him. She's canceled the credit cards. She's called Tom Grant. She didn't want surveillance at the house in case Kurt did come back. And that's all on Sunday now. And then Kurt did come back, and at sometime, and at around 2 a.m. is when Mark Lanigan and Dylan and possibly Danny or someone else or maybe 2 other people came up to the house as well early Sunday morning and killed attacked him. There was another yelling match, which happened in the basement, and then a scuffle. And then Kurt was being brought out unconsciously to the greenhouse. And then on Monday, the next day, April 4th, Courtney calls in the missing person report and puts out more of a narrative, a definite narrative that Kurt's suicidal. She can say anything now. He left the rehab, bought the shotgun then, and he's, looking for drugs because she knows he's already dead. And then she calls for the electrician to go the next day to the greenhouse, Gary Smith, to find the body, but he doesn't. He has to reschedule until Friday, April 8th, when the body will be found. I've got it all in my head. I'm literally just like with my eyes closed saying all this. And so Courtney knows she has some time now before the body's going to absolutely, definitely be found by the authorities. And now we go back to what Maureen said, one of the band members from Babes in Toyland, that she was high with Dylan Carlson, and he admitted to her that him and Courtney seen the body a day before the police found the body, which would have been on April 7th, Thursday. That was the day that all the eyewitnesses left the house. That's what Chris Todd said in the interviews he gave. That's the information Joe gave him. And so that person in the red dress from behind that looked like it would have been Courtney. Like she had to personally see this for herself before the body was moved. And she knew she had one more to do that because she called the electrician to get him to go on Tuesday and find the body, but he had to reschedule for Friday, April 8th. There, case solved. Now, when will the police understand this? I hope you, people, I hope everybody here saves this live stream because that's all of it right there. Right, and she knew she had one more day to go there before the authorities would find the body because she called the electrician who said he could only go there on Friday, April 8th. Exactly. And when I seen that photo of Courtney with the guitar and I seen her reflection in the mirror, her back, I'm like, holy shit. She looks exactly like Kurt Cobain from the back, and I'm getting a fucking haunting feeling. And I know I'm right. And Maureen's quote from that band member from Babes in Toyland just confirmed it. And I owe a big thank you to In Bloomer for that, whoever In Bloomer is. Thank you. All these years, fucking finally I understand it completely.
I accidentally picked up the phone because I was expecting a call and it happened to be Courtney. Had I heard from Kurt, what was Callie doing? She said, "Get Kurt to call me." Callie was furious with me for taking the call. There was a real bad atmosphere over everything. There was a real vibe of fundamental chaos. It felt like somebody was going to die the whole time. I didn't want to leave.
Yeah, shit's getting really heated up over there at the house in Seattle.
Because it felt like Callie was going to die.
It's the last place he should have ever went to. I think I'm going to stop this live stream like that because that's perfect. We have it all figured out here. And regardless of who wants to discredit me and say Courtney wasn't there and basically cover for her and cover for Mark Lanigan, yeah, that would have been Courtney Love on the 7th. And we know that now because of Maureen from Babes in Toyland, who got high with Dylan, and he admitted to being there with Courtney the day before the body was found in the house. And that was the day all the eyewitnesses left the house. That would have been Courtney. It's like she had to see the body before it was moved. She knew the next day that Gary Smith would be there and find the body because she already called for him to go there on Tuesday, on the 5th, but he couldn't get there that day. He had to go on Friday. So she knew she had Thursday to go there. Fuck! Oh, shit! That means Tom Grant was there. Oh, fuck. That means Tom Grant is in on it. Holy fuck. Because that's Thursday, April 7th. And that's exactly when Tom went there with Mark again. What the fuck? What the fuck? Okay, can somebody talk to me about what I just fucking realized? Holy shit. Thursday, April 7th. Oh, great. This is exactly what Rosemary probably fucking figured out. Yeah, I already responded to that about Courtney Love, blah, 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 CIA, blah, 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 blah. Disinformation from herself. But holy fucking shit, this means Tom Grant is also involved. Or if not involved, he avoided Courtney every time she was there on the 7th then somehow. Another coincidence. He didn't know the greenhouse was there and he didn't know Courtney Love was there. Okay, now it's looking really weird. Now it's looking really weird. Wow. Yeah, he's been defending Courtney and Mark the entire time. Even Dylan. Even while making us think at first that Dylan was a suspect and soaked in bleach and his case manual studied. But ultimately now when you look at any live streams with Tom, he's defending Dylan and Mark and Courtney. Those are the last three people that Tom Grant should be defending. I don't either. Maybe when Courtney was there on the 7th of April with Dylan in the greenhouse in the red dress, maybe Tom wasn't around at that time. And he would have been taking photos. He would have photos of Joe. That means he would have photos of everyone. If anything, he has all that blackmail and he's gatekeeping the case to make money off of it. And he missed Courtney being at the greenhouse and house every time that he went to search the house those 2 times on April 7th, Thursday. But that's, I don't know. That'd be kind of comedic timing itself. Not Kurt missing people and that being funny, but Tom missing Courtney like that would be kind of weird. Fuck. Yeah. But that's even weirder because that means that Tom flew down the same time that Courtney flew down. That makes it look like Tom and Courtney went together, but tried to make it look like a separate thing as well in case they were caught. And she's the one that paid for his fucking plane ticket. So they went down there before the body was found, probably just to stage the crime scene more and for her to fucking, because it was a personal thing she just needed to see before the 8th when Gary was scheduled to be there and actually find the body because Courtney called for him to do that. Wow. So Tom's in on the staging of the crime scene. Wow, that makes perfect sense with everything else we know now. So Tom Grant is in on the staging of the crime scene. Courtney Love was there in a red dress. There's photos of Joe, which would be blackmail. Tom's discrediting Joe and laughing at him. He's crediting Mark and laughing about that. He's discrediting Courtney ever being there. He's laughing about that, and she was, but that was on April 7th, Thursday, after the murder. She flew in the same day that or night that Tom Grant did. So she would be staging it. It wouldn't have been Eric that had the letter. It would have been Courtney. Eric was probably with her. Now it all makes clear sense. It makes sense now. They did the staging. The murder was already done by Mark Lanigan and Dylan, possibly Danny and somebody else, or possibly not Danny and somebody else. And then on Thursday, April 7th, after the murder's already done, Tom Grant, Courtney, Eric, they're in the greenhouse staging it. The eyewitnesses leave and they see someone in a red dress. Callie's saying photos are being taken by a private investigator. That is true. Before I didn't believe that, but now I realize that is true. So Tom Grant would have blackmail on Joe. He could spin it. Like this guy was there. You know what? Tom Grant could get in trouble for that too. Well, you were there too. You know what went down. He is an idiot. But he's involved in the staging, that means. So it means he's involved in the murder. So Joe would be wanting to steer clear of somebody that's still involved in the murder, that's still alive, which is probably why he said Mark Lanigan's name years after he died. Really soon, like right after he died. But we figured it out here now. And so did Eric Blanc. And yes, Eric's the first one. All the glory goes to him. But what really fucking matters is we have it figured out. Now let's try not to get murdered ourselves. That'll be great. Let's try not to get killed ourselves now. And Tom Grant's just going to laugh about it. People are going to be confused, but hopefully everyone has a clear sense now of what actually happened. At least on this channel. Without misinformation. Without fake AI posters about a new documentary. Without selling stickers. Or dirt. Knowing knowing that Courtney and Tom are in on the setup staging now, I'm going to go over those phone calls with Tom Grant and Courtney Love. And a lot of this is going to be hard to really make out. Some of it will be clear. Yeah, Courtney Love was in the greenhouse. So was Tom. So was Dylan. He's dismissing Joe being there. He's dismissing Mark. He's dismissing Dylan. He's dismissing Courtney. He's dismissing the greenhouse. He's dismissing Danny. He's dismissing everything. He's part of this staging. Yeah, they were there with Courtney. They flew down on April 7th on Thursday to look in the greenhouse and do more of the staging. The murder was already done before they arrived. It makes total sense now. Now the police just need to fucking do something. I hope this live stream stays up because this is really important information. We're going to go over the Tom Grant, Courtney Love phone calls now that we know this, now that we understand that. They are staging everything. So that means these phone calls from before, even on the 3rd, are being staged. They were in on it before that. Courtney knew Tom before that. I believe that's true now. And Eric Blanc, all the glory, Eric Blanc pointed that out. Okay, so let's go with Courtney Love, Tom Grant phone calls. And by the way, yes, Eric, all the glory, but stop with the misinformation. All right. Yeah, but they easily rejected that. Seattle police is just making it out to be a joke. They did not mention Mark Lanigan. Michelle Wilkins, the hero of the case, is having Joe talk to her saying Mark Lanigan was there. And then she's going on her platform and saying that Mark Lanigan was never there because she's friends with people now that were friends with Mark Lanigan. So that doesn't do any good for Kurt, even though there's a forensic thing. So what the heck? Okay, here are the phone calls with Tom Grant and Courtney Love that are staged on April 3rd and before that and after that. Some will be hard to hear, some will be okay to hear.
Hello, the office here. Yeah. Can we go talk to that quickly while? Yeah. Okay. How you doing? I'm good. Not obviously very good. I mean, what, yeah, but I just want to say this first. The feeling is that, like this guy, the public access guy, I think he's crazy. I don't think he's...
No. What are we going to do? Okay. Just a sec. I need to speak into my phone to write this down. Tom Grant took part in the staging of the suicide in the greenhouse and the staging of the phone calls before, actually on the date of the murder. Wow, makes even more sense. April 3rd, 1994, Sunday, ... as well as after with those phone calls. More of the staging was done with those, ... I have to, when I say ... it's, oh, fuck that. That would have been April 8th, Thursday, 1994. Tom Grant flew down with Courtney Love. Courtney even paid for Tom's ticket. Dylan was in the greenhouse with Courtney. Courtney had on a red dress. Maureen from Babes in Toyland even said she got high with Dylan, and Dylan admitted that Courtney and Dylan himself were in the greenhouse with Courtney a day before the body was found. That means, because that's also the same date that Dylan was in the greenhouse, but was also in the house with Tom Grant on the 7th. That means that's the same date. So that means Tom Grant, Courtney Love, and Dylan were all in the greenhouse together, and likely Eric Erlandson as well. And so that means the phone calls were staged and by Courtney and Tom, and the crime scene was staged by Courtney and Tom and Eric, Callie, and Dylan, and probably Mark too. Wow, and she hires Tom Grant right on the day that Kurt got killed, apparently. Tom Grant apparently worked with Courtney before that, and I believe that. So that means they only would have started staging those phone calls specifically on the date that they knew Kurt was murdered. And that's why those phone calls started on Sunday, April 3rd, the exact day that Kurt was murdered. Holy shit. Because they were staging what they did to Kurt right then. And then they got to Seattle from LA on Thursday, April 7th. And they were in the greenhouse doing more of the staging. It makes fucking perfect sense now. Holy fuck. That means Mark and Dylan and Courtney and Eric and Callie are all in on the murder with Tom Grant. And Tom is discrediting Joe Burns, the eyewitness, and Bonnie as well, because he's involved. And he did see the greenhouse, and he does know that Courtney was there. And he even flew down with Courtney on the same day, April 7th, Thursday, that Courtney flew down there. Possibly by Danny. Maureen, I forget her last name, from Babe's High with Dylan, and Dylan admitted to seeing the body with Courtney the day before the body was found. That was Thursday, April 7th. That was the same day that Tom Grant was there with Mark and Dylan. So that means Mark was there as well that day. Courtney had on the red dress in the greenhouse. Those are the killers. And the ones that are alive today are Tom Grant, Courtney Love, Dylan Carlson, and Eric Erlandson and Callie DeWitt. And maybe another individual if there's another person we don't know. There we go. Hopefully I don't get killed. Okay. Now what? I'll just speak to people now. I think I'm going to actually stop this, and I'm going to save this video because this is the most important live stream I've ever done in my life. All right. Good night, everyone. I'm going to save this. I'm going to make a video on everything I just said here. I'll put a lot of photos to it of the Cobain case. Have a good night, everyone. I'm off to work. Good luck.